All right, guys, today we're going to do something just a little bit different. We're going to review a very historical and incredibly rare lock. Before I get into it, I want to thank Doug Schneider from Bay City's Lock and Safe for trusting me enough to send me. I can't even imagine the value of this lock. First, for its scarcity, and secondly, for its historical value. This lock, you might look at it and say that is nothing but a Schlage, and you'd be right. This is called the binary multi-plane cylinder, designed by none other than Ernest L. Schlage of the Schlage Lock Company, first patented in 1971. This, you can probably tell, is a prototype. You can see some machine marks. There's a screw in the top. You can see the threads kind of went out the side there. And this is one of probably only 2 locks like this. Making this even rarer, this lock and its brother were both taken off of a house called La Casa Pacifica, also called the Western White House, inhabited by none other than President Nixon. That's right. Richard Nixon owned this lock, and it was installed for him in his Western White House for security. Incredible lock. When you take a look at this lock from the front, you notice we have, first of all, we have 3 pinholes. These are for tensioning. Nothing fits into that one or that one. And then this one is to align, and I'll show you in a moment, the pin on the key to make sure it's aligned correctly. It is also a pin that needs to be picked. It is a spring-loaded detent. If you look inside of there, and I'll get a little flashlight to take a look, I think you can see there are 4 banks of pins. Now when you look at the keys, you might say, well, tubular key, very cool. You might say, well, it looks like there's about 6. And in fact, there are 2 banks of 8 and 2 banks of 7 pins for a total of 30 pins in the cylinder, and then 1 more pin right there in the front. 31 pins. So for that reason, and of course the historical value, I'm not going to be taking this apart, because it probably requires special tools to get it back together. All right, you can slide the key in any way. You can turn it. You see it will not go into either of those 2 holes, and you keep rotating it, and when it reaches the right hole, it slides in, and then it works absolutely flawlessly. Beautiful lock. Now, I will tell you that the lock itself is the brass part. This housing, this roughed-in, rough-machined aluminum housing, is simply a marketing thing. And I gotta say, it's genius. This is from a deadbolt for a Schlage. And we all know what Schlage looks like. Looks almost identical to him. So he slides in there. Schlage knew that he had millions of these out in the field, all potential customers for an upgraded lock cylinder. So all they had to do was take that other guy, throw him out, get this guy, slide him into the same keyway, and there you go. Instant upgrade. No other modifications required. Friggin' genius, man. Anyway, let's get back to this guy. As I said, this is completely solid aluminum. There are no pins in the top of here. There is 1 flathead screw. And the only thing that flathead screw does is it screws down and screws into the outer housing of the brass lock. And that just prevents the core from turning. If I were to remove that screw, the real lock would slide straight out, and all 30 pins would spring all over the lock lap. So we're not going to be taking this apart. In order to pick this, you can tension it with a piece of wire from any of those 3 holes. You got to pick that guy, and then pick all 30 pins. To do that, you might want to create, and I'm not going to, but I started to, a homemade rake out of a Peterson knife, or you could probably get in there with something like this. However, I'm not going to. I really am afraid of damaging Doug's lock. I'm sure he would drive all the way out here and try to dissuade me from doing that. I will, however, partially disassemble it. I'm going to pull off the tail piece, and then I'm going to show you that it truly is an inner core and an outer core, and I'm going to put the key in and turn it and show you exactly how that works. The tail piece is not here, obviously, but anyway, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take this pin out. While I'm taking the back of this off, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the blueprints from the patent office. There's the patent number on the bottom of there, and you'll see that there are truly 30 pins in here, a total of 8 on 2 banks and 7 on the other 2 banks. They are all opposing each other. So it would be just a nightmare. Some of the pins are quite long and others are nothing but, looks like ball bearings. So it'd be quite a challenge to get up inside of here. The upper part of the lock, at least in the drawing, is not as tall as it is in a Schlage lock. So again, that was the initial patent that I'm sure at that point they really weren't sure was going to be used for a direct exchange to swap out some of the Schlage cores. And you'll see that that screw going through the Bible really just does hold the outer shell of the lock. All right. This is the key. I'm going to slide this in there. I do have the tailpiece off. And then if you take a very close look, and again, it's a little difficult to see, the part right here is the actual center core, and then the outer core is going to remain still in the bottom. It's held in place by that screw. It locks right there into the top of the shell. So when we turn it, the inner core turns and the outer core stays in place. There's nothing in that Bible. I've got to say, at first I thought it was a fake lock, because I thought, you got four opposing banks of pins, but all the pins must be in the Bible. So I'm just going to put a pick in there, just pick the top ones, and all the rest of those have to be fake. Not true. These are absolutely real. Let me go ahead and slide. Well, I'm going to leave that in there for right now. I'm going to show you the key up close as well. These are, as I said, original Schlages. I think you can make that out. I've never seen keys like this before. And some of them actually have fingerprints on them. When they were cast, whoever pulled them out of the mold left some fingerprints on them. See if I can find, there's one that's got some fingerprints on it. So who knows? I mean, the history of this thing. Nixon bought the La Casa Pacifica, and here's an overhead shot of it. He bought that in 1969, same year he got elected president, and he lived there until 1980 when he ended up selling it. Just a little bit of history. I know you guys love the history, but it all goes with this lock, so you got to listen to it. 1969 is the same year when Nixon got elected that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. 1970, the EPA was first created. Of course, that could go away any day under our current president. In 1971, 18-year-olds for the first time were allowed to vote. In 1972, the strategic arm limitation talks started, and that's still going on today. 1972, for the first time, a U.S. president, President Nixon, visited China. In 1973, the Vietnam War finally ended, wrapped that up. And unfortunately for President Nixon, Watergate happened in 1973 as well. Started in 1973 and drug all the way into 1974 until President Nixon resigned. The first president to do so. That may change here in the near future. Who knows? But as of today, he's the only president to ever have resigned. If only they had used this lock on the Watergate, maybe that history would have been quite different. Anyway, a super secure lock. I'm not going to try to pick it because I probably can't. It's been copied by Zeiss Econ, some of the elements of the design. Some of the elements of the design have also been copied by Kaba, and again are still in use today. What an amazing design by the original Mr. Schlage. Anyway, fellas, that is all I got to say about this lock. Doug, I really do appreciate you sending in this literally living piece of history. Just amazing. Some of the history that goes behind this, the design, and then where this thing was installed for at least several years. Fellas, thanks for your time. Stay safe. Stay legal. All right, that went pretty smooth. Now all I got to do is put that tailpiece on there and... Oh, no! Crap! Just kidding, Doug. It's still intact, man. But I think that's probably about how many pins and springs would fly out of that thing.